Hello, and welcome back. Today's topic, and we've talked about in the past, we've talked about creating a plan. We should always have a plan. Today's topic, we're going to talk about what we should plan for. Um, Instead of talking about a specific event, because everybody's going to be different. And as soon as I say one event, somebody's going to say, well, that doesn't have anything to do with me. So they're going to turn it off, or they're going to turn away and not listen. Or they're only going to listen with half their heart. So what I'm going to talk about, it's not a specific event, but it applies to many different events. In fact, it applies to almost every event. Just like the basics of food, water, and shelter, what we're going to talk about today applies to pretty much any type of event, whether it's a natural disaster that only lasts a few days or a few months, to the end of the world as we know it. So I hope that this information will help, especially when you're looking for starting to do your planning. As I've said previous, and I will probably say thousands of times from this time forward as well, the plan is the most important piece. You need to start with the plan. That way you know where you are and where you're going to go and how you're going to get there. Okay? So, first thing that you want to plan for is to have no electricity. Okay? That means that we're not going to have any type of internet, and we will have no cell phones. Okay, so you need to be able to figure out ways of overcoming those types of obstacles. That means that we're probably not going to be able to talk to our family and friends. That's going to be rough. So, unless you can figure out smoke signals and they live close enough, there's probably that one's going to probably be tricky to overcome. But the other thing with this, more than just the notification, is the fact of a lot of people have electric appliances, stoves, etc. That means that they're not going to be able to cook. If you live in an apartment, that could be a real big challenge, because setting up and building a campfire in the middle of your front room might be frowned upon by just about everybody, to include yourself. So you're going to need to figure out a way that you can cook food and perhaps even boil water and that kinds of stuff. Anything that you need for a fire, or to cook or fire for. So that's also going to be a problem when it comes to heat in the wintertime. We're coming up on winter and fall here in the northern hemisphere, so that can be a problem. You're going to have to figure out a way to stay warm. Okay. As we go through these things, it's going to be you. Hopefully, we'll tie all this stuff together. So, the other thing that we're not going to have is water, especially if you're on city water. So don't expect the water to flow. Even if it does for a short period of time, because a lot of big cities and even some of the smaller ones have water towers, they're going to run dry eventually. And even if water does come, the facilities that purify that water or clear that water, if you call it that, especially on city water, will not operate. If you have a well, there won't be any electricity to pump the water from the well. So you need to identify a means of acquiring water, whether it's from a spring, a stream, a lake, a river, whatever it is. And then you're going to have to figure out ways to purify that water, especially from lakes, rivers, and streams and stuff. So plan on not having water. So you need to have a plan and know where and how you're going to get this water. Okay. The other thing that's probably not going to be available are stores. So that means there's not going to be any place to get food. Restaurants will not be able to cook food. So the other thing that you're probably not going to be able to get is like clothes, basically anything that we purchase from a store today. You're not going to be able to use, Amazon or eBay. You won't be able to contact them to begin with. So you need to learn the skills that will enable you to do or make a lot of these things that you get from a store. Okay. Now, depending on the actual event, if it's a natural disaster, then hopefully at some point in your future, this will rectify itself and the civilized veneer will come back across. During this period, understand there will be no civilized veneer. Most people are going to be out to take care of themselves, and they will take you out in order to get what you have. So that's something that you need to be aware of. So when things go sideways like this, we need to be able to do everything pretty much by ourselves, at least as a group. There are some folks out there who could probably do this all by themselves. Okay. They can cook, they can find food, they can clean it, they can cook it, they can preserve it, they can store it, they can find water, they can purify water, they can build their own shelters, they can do all of these different things. But there's not very many people that are probably in that category. So for the majority of the folks that listen to these YouTubes and stuff, you're going to want to first identify a group prior to something happening. Okay. If you wait until something happens, you're probably way too late. Because then you're going to be desperate and you may compromise on a requirement that you want your group to have. Okay. Because in Return to Life, one of the problems that the main character in my book faced was there were people who they allowed in without vetting who was only concerned with themselves. Okay. So eventually he established a committee which would basically vet everybody who was coming in. So basically everybody had to pass this little test in order to become part of the bigger group. Now, it sounds inhumane, it sounds cruel, but the fact is, if you have a group that has conflicting ideals, or if you have people in this group who are not part of the team, it's only going to build the divisions between the different, or basically factions within this different group. And then those factions are going to start fighting against each other, and the group is going to fail. So you need to identify a group prior to something happening. Well, everybody is still thinking rationally, or at least as rationally as we normally think, and find one that you can become a part of that will work together as a team. Because if they're not, if the ideals or the ideologies are not the same, if their religious beliefs are incompatible, there's going to be trouble, and there will become a rift between the different people. And basically that's what we're seeing today in America. I can't speak for all the other countries. I know in some of the other countries that I've had the pleasure of visiting, a lot of that is going on in those countries as well. So the group that you look for, the group that you find, you need to be compatible with pretty much everybody in there. And in Return to Life, there were few rules. Basically, everybody was part of the defense, whether you were an actual trigger puller or you supported the trigger pullers. Trigger puller is somebody that actually will fire a weapon against somebody that's trying to attack the group as a whole. If for whatever reason you do not feel that you can, take another person's life, that doesn't mean that you can't be part of the group. It just means that you have to be able to support those who are willing to do that. So that may be bringing beans and bullets to those people that are on the perimeter, bringing water, whatever it is. But everybody has to be part of the defense, and everybody has to support everybody else. Okay, everybody works together, and everybody works. Period. So, whether you're a school teacher, whether you are a farmer, a rancher, a gardener, whatever it is, everybody has a job. Okay, there's thousands of things that need to be done within a community. You have medical people, you have people who do clerical stuff, the quartermaster kinds of folks that are responsible for the resources that the community has. Everybody has to have their own piece, and everybody has to understand that nobody is any more important than any of the other people. Okay? Inside this community, everybody is equal. Okay? So the person who's helping to take out the trash is just as important as the person who is growing the food or cooking the food, whatever it is. There's no stealing. If you're caught stealing, then you're out. Okay, because those resources are planned and protected so that the whole will survive, not just a select few. Okay, again, everybody is equal. So, and I don't know if I remember all the rules. It's been a while since I've read or wrote that book, but those are the three main ones. And understanding that and finding a group of like-minded folks is going to really help you to make it through whatever the circumstances, whether it's, again, a short-term natural disaster kind of event or one that has completely changed the world in which we live. Okay? The likelihood that there will be no more fossil fuels available, or there'll be limited supplies, even in a stuff hits the fan or the end of the world as we know it. If you're lucky enough, you might be able to find gas stations or abandoned vehicles or something and be able to get a hold of some, gas, natural gas, diesel, whatever it is, whatever fossil fuel that you're looking at. But it's best to plan to have none. And that goes with any of these things. Yes, we can probably potentially find some additional resources from abandoned houses, warehouses, what have you, such as what they did in Return to Life. But, my motto has always been plan for the worst and pray for the best. So basically what we're doing here is we are planning for the absolute worst conditions, that there is nothing else other than what we have. If we plan for that, if there is something that we can find, then that's a bonus. But if our plan is created in such a manner that we can live even though we don't have all these things that we've become accustomed to, then if something is, if the event that happens is less than, complete end of the world as we know it, then we're still going to be able to make it through, right? If the end of the world as we know it happens, and we have planned to make it through that, we're still ready. So it doesn't matter what event. If you plan correctly, if you plan for the worst case scenario, then if it happens, we're still okay. If something short of that happens, we're still okay. All right. So that's why, I wanted to talk about these particular things, because I talk about planning all the time, and everybody says, yeah, we need a plan, but nobody ever talks about what that plan should cover, or what the event we should consider. That the event is up to you. Okay. Whatever it is that keeps you up at night. But if you plan with these factors in mind, it doesn't matter almost what event you're planning for, whether it's a financial collapse. And I mean, if you listen to anything on YouTube, if you listen to the news, there's a lot of moving parts out there, and a lot of them are indicating that it isn't good. So you need to be ready, be prepared, but be ready as well. And, I also talk about the core of calm, because being ready is not just having a bunch of stuff stacked in a vault somewhere with a glass case on it and a hammer beside it that says break glass in case of emergency. Being mentally prepared is probably the most important thing. You can have absolutely nothing and survive if you have the right mental attitude. So that's my little sermon for today. Also plan on little to no external support. Even in a natural disaster, depending on the magnitude of that disaster, you may or may not be able to count on federal or state assistance. I know Eve's talked about it, and we've talked about it in a lot of the disasters that we have seen, that support or aid from state and federal levels, or even local, sometimes doesn't get there in time. Okay, so you need to be able to take care of yourself and those that you care about, whether it's your family, loved ones, friends, whoever they are. You need to be able to take care of your particular group. Okay. When we start depending on others to do stuff for us is when we start to lose our security, and we start to lose our freedom. Okay, taking care of ourselves is our job, and it's our responsibility. Now, responsibility is an interesting thing, because I can delegate certain tasks to others. When I was in the military, I did it a lot. And I was given delegation authority. People above me at the times would, tell me, this is something I need you to do. Okay. Even though it was my job, or, a job that I passed on to a subordinate, it was still my responsibility. So if something happened and that job didn't get done, I was the one still responsible, not the person that I delegated that task to. Okay. Our individual responsibility is to take care of ourselves and those that we love and those that we're responsible for, our families. So we can delegate that task, which is basically what you do when you wait to depend on federal or state aid, because you're basically delegating your task to the government. And when you do that, even though you have delegated it, it does not release you from the responsibility of still taking care of those who are dependent on you for their support. Okay? Wife, husband, children, grandparents, parents, whoever it is still up to us, and it is still our responsibility to make sure that that happens. And I think a lot of folks kind of forget that sometimes. But when we, as I said, when we give up assign that task to somebody else, we are not releasing ourselves from the responsibility or the obligation to make sure that those tasks get done. And in the case of like Katrina, that was a fiasco. And I mean, Katrina is the one that's probably the most known because it got the most publicity on the news media and stuff. But that happens more often than you might imagine. I've been in a lot of disaster areas. I've never even seen the federal and state aid folks. I don't know where they were. I don't know where they were located, but I know I never saw them. So don't depend on somebody else to save your bacon. You need to do it yourself. And the way that you do that is to start planning now on what you're going to do when something happens. These things are factors that you need to consider. No electricity, no internet, no phones, no water, no stores, no clothes, no food, no fossil fuels, and no support. Okay? If you start with those factors in mind, it almost doesn't matter what event that you want to talk about. If you give me an event, I'm pretty sure I can show you how, if I plan against this set of criteria, I could survive any of those types of events that you can tell me about. Okay. Some are more challenging than others. I mean, there are some events out there that can potentially happen that would really rock our world. If we get a CME like the one that happened in, 1859 or 1959? 1959. The Carrington event, where the telegraph wires caught fire. If we have something like that, we will go back to the Stone Age. I guarantee you. All of these factors, they're definitely going to come into play. There's potential that, we can get into another mini ice age. There's talk about those things coming up. In fact, I was looking at the volcano stuff yesterday, and there's like 24 active volcanoes right now. In fact, there was an eruption yesterday and the day before in southern Alaska. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the name. I'm terrible at pronunciation of those things, but if you go to the volcano, if you do a search for volcanoes 2018, I'm sure you can find the site and find it. It's almost due south of, trying to see it in my head. It's like almost dead center in the middle, down on the Aleutian Island chain. So, if enough materials get up there, it can actually cloud out or block the sunlight, which could put us back into an ice age. So, geologically speaking, a lot of these things have happened. The magnetic poles, they are shifting. I was just watching YouTube talking about it again. Things do happen, but that doesn't mean that we have to just give up and die. I'm a pretty stubborn individual. I'm probably not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I assure you that it will take quite a bit uh, in order for me to just give up. It just doesn't happen. I don't know if it's the Scotch Irish in me, if it's because I'm a Capricorn, I don't know. Um, but I don't give up. And when I plan for the potential worst case scenario. Now, do I have enough resources to last me for the rest of my life if something like this happens? No. I do have the means to grow my own food. I do have enough food that would keep me going for quite some time. Um, but I would have to augment it by hunting and again growing my own food. Um, but the other thing is we have to change our expectations. Are we going to be able to sit down to Thanksgiving dinners every meal? No, probably not. In fact, I can almost guarantee you not. Now, the other thing that you need to think about is what duration do I need to store for? Well, that's up to you in the event that you are looking to create this plan for. Is it realistic that you can go out and purchase enough food for everybody in your family? And let's just say a family of 4, and you have 3 families of 4, so that's 12 people, right? Can you go out and purchase enough food to survive a year, 2 years, 3 years? Yeah, if you have enough money, I suppose you could. But eventually that food is going to run out, so you're going to have to learn the skills or find a group that somebody has those skills, that has those seeds, because it doesn't matter how many years worth of food I have stored. If it's a end of the world as we know it kind of a scenario, it's going to be a long, long time before that civilized veneer gets back in place, which means it's going to be a long, long time before you're going to be able to go to a grocery store as you do today and purchase food, water, clothes, guns, ammo, whatever it is. So plan now and start by, when you go to the store and you buy 2 cans of food, you eat green beans. So buy 2 cans of green beans, or 3 if they're on sale for, 2 for $3 or whatever. But just start small, start working on a couple of weeks. And once you have a couple of weeks, then do a month. Once you have a month, do another month, and then so on and so forth. And eventually you will have, enough for 6 months, a year. But you need to have the plan. Plan what resources that you're going to need, what skills you're going to need, and how much of that stuff that you're going to need. And then identify where you are today. Okay, in most folks' pantry, they probably have, I would say, a week to 2 weeks worth of food, unless you're going to the store every single day, purchasing, only enough for a next couple meals. Almost everybody's going to have at least 1 to 2 weeks worth of food in their pantries and refrigerator and freezer and whatever. So start with that. So you're not starting with 0. You're starting with whatever you have now. The same with the skills. What skills do you need to survive this type of criteria? You're going to need to know how to make a fire. You're going to need to know how to find and purify water, etc. So identify what skills you have and be honest. If you can't start a fire except by pouring, a half a gallon of gasoline on top of a pile of wood and setting it on fire, learn how to make a fire. Okay. I know that's kind of a simple, pretty much everybody should be able to do that, but not everybody can. And then once you've learned these skills, once you've identified the skills that you need, you've identified the skills that you already have, you can figure out which ones that you need to focus on. Once you have the basics of that skill, start working on the next. For the case of fire, now most people can start a fire with a match or a lighter. Start working on creating a fire from using a magnifying glass. Start working on the one with rubbing the sticks together. Now I'm going to tell you that one isn't there, and it takes a lot of energy to get that thing to work. So you need to practice it. It's not something where you can just take a couple sticks, rub them together, and say, "Oh, hey, I got fire." If you can, hey, I salute you. I can't. It takes a while. So, but don't try to do everything today. If you do, you're going to burn yourself out and you're going to quit doing this. I'm going to do a video that we talk about this next topic. I'm going to focus the video on it. But if you are somebody that has someone, a significant other, a family member, friend, whatever, who thinks you're crazy for being ready for some kind of an event, or they actually push back against it, you can still, if you go to the store, now for me it's a little difficult because I don't go to a grocery store, my wife does, but she's pretty squared away, so she takes care of me and helps us to keep stuff stocked up. But if you go to the store, especially if you're the one that goes and gets the groceries, slip an extra can or two in when you go to the store. Cost isn't going to be that much, but you can eventually get enough that it will help you out. Learn how to create water purification systems that don't require buying, some big fancy water filtration system, which, by the way, is one of the other items that eventually you're going to run out of filters for that thing, and you're going to have to create it from the materials that you have available to you. So there are ways to do that. In the upcoming book, I talk about how to create a filtration system. There are videos and stuff online that will help you to identify that. But now is the time to do that before something does happen. And in my opinion, something is going to happen, and it's going to happen soon. There's too many moving parts. There's too many things that are acting wonky, if you will. That something is it has to happen. It's just, we're to the point now that something is going to happen. I feel that with all my stuff. So be ready, be prepared, and be safe. Okay. Again, please join or subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you have any comments, if you have questions, shoot me an email at guy@greatlivingsources.com. Visit our website. There's a lot of information on there. All the books and stuff that we offer are on there as well. The website is greatlivingsources.com. You can leave comments on the YouTube channel here, but if there's a topic that you would like to hear something about, or you have a question, I've been an instructor for quite a few years, and I tell all my classes the only dumb question is the one that you don't answer, because the question you ask, others probably also have that same question, but are too afraid to ask the question. So ask the question so that the other people can hear the answer. All right. So remember the core calm, stay balanced, stay focused, stay vigilant. Situational awareness is a big key, especially with all of the things that are going on right now. And, create this plan so that when something happens, you're not caught by surprise. All right. So thank you for tuning in. We'll talk tomorrow. Bye.